So, what you doing? So I'm gonna start with today we're going to be making some denim bikinis with pockets made from patches of the same fabric that we used to make our puppy handkerchiefs and our scrunchies. If you have a pair of pants that you're going to be turning into shorts, then you can absolutely just use the legs from that. So when I cut these, the parts that I'm going to want to salvage, if you're going to keep the top part for shorts, then you'll want to just cut off the seams. We want to save those because we can use them for straps, we can use them for waistbands. Now this time I'm going to actually use the pockets for something for Waffles. So I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to do that yet, but so I want to leave that general area alone. I want to save this connection. This is what I want to use to fasten it around my waist. It's my favorite part of my favorite denim bikinis that I've made. I think it just gives it more of an authentic, like, denim look. I lost my sewing scissors, but I know they're somewhere in the house, so I can't really justify getting new ones yet. I want to utilize seams as often as I can. So I know that I'm going to create a casing for my lower waistband. When I decide on how big I want my pocket, if I'm going to cut it, then I want to make sure that I'm giving myself plenty of seam allowance. And I do want to cut it so that I can cut the bikini. Now is when I want to think about the design that I want for my bikini. So I do want my patch at a bit of an angle. I am going to make sure that I stitch a little bit up the side so that nothing's falling out of my pocket, but I do want it to be at a bit of an angle. And make sure that, actually I could probably measure with the patch. I'm going to have it at that angle. So as long as I have the patch itself covered, then I'll have my boot covered. So I'm going to end up creating a casing for us to feed the waistband, waist strap, under bodice strap, the strap that goes around the bottom of our bikini through. So I'm going to utilize the fact that these jeans are already hemmed on the bottom and use that bottom hem as the base of our bikini. So I want to make sure that I have them folded exactly in half so that the seams are all the way on the side. Right. Place my pocket where I want it to be. And then I want to slide it straight up to give myself a lot of seam allowance. So I'm going to end up folding this over. You're lying, lay down. About 1.5 inches, maybe 1.25 inches, but I'm gonna go ahead and allow for 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches, because I'm just cutting it right now. And then that's where I'm going to start. A more thorough designer would tell you to iron your fabric first. I'm a little bit too lazy for my own good sometimes. So I want to save as much of the side seams as I can. So I'm going to make sure that I'm only cutting as little as possible away from the sides. Give myself a little seam allowance there. All right, so now this is the bottom. So I want to start thinking about how I want the shape of the bikini to be. If I had better scissors, I would have just done that through both sides of the pants and I would have already had two identical sides. But since I lost my scissors, or my good scissors anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just lay this directly on the other side so that I can do the exact same thing to the back side of the pants. Careful not to clip that hem because I'm going to use it later. So now we'll fold the base where it's already hemmed back. And I'm just going to safety pin that up about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, 1.25 inches, however big we decided the casing was going to be. Do that on both sides. And I'm going to sew those. Okay, so apparently I forgot to hit record during one of the most crucial parts of the last video, which was when I attached the pockets to the bodice. So fortunately though, I did actually start my next bikini already. So you can see that I folded it over and, hey honey, and hemmed a casing about the same width as the strap that I cut for the underbodice or the waistband, whatever we're gonna call it. And now, good job. You want me to throw it? So now I'm gonna go ahead and cut my pockets. This one, I actually wanna do the flower pattern because I feel like the purple complements the dark blue a lot better. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut a piece about the same size as the bikini itself. The pocket we are actually going to hem because we don't want it to fray while we're holding stuff in it. So it's not going to actually be the same size at the end of the day. So I'm gonna roll inside on top of itself like this. That way, when we have it stitched, there are no raw edges to fray. And then I'm gonna go ahead and safety pin it like that to sort of hold my thoughts. So when we started, I was kind of working from this angle, but now that we've got all of our edges rolled over, I think that I'm actually going to make this the base. And then we've got it like this, which is a nice cute little design. So let's find my needle here. Okay, so we've got it rolled over on all sides. We've got our position picked out. And then I'm going to start inside the casing. That'll remind me not to stitch all the way through the casing, which still has to stay open so that our waistband can slide through, under bodice band, whatever it is. So I'm not going to start my stitching right at the end because I want to back stitch a little bit, go backwards while I'm stitching. That way I'm just reinforcing the place that the stitching comes through at. especially down here at the bottom of the pocket, because we want to make sure that nothing is falling through the pocket. Now it can be kind of difficult to make small stitches while trying not to go all the way through the fabric, but if you do make large stitches, it's not really that big of a deal, because even if you have like really big stitches, like these ones are probably close to 1/4 inch stitches, which is way too big. That's like a baste. Then I can go backwards and cut this stitch in half. And then when I come back up through, I have a stitch that's half the size here. And even if I make a really big stitch, the next stitch is only the same size as my final product here. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this all the way around, leaving this top part where my big safety pin is open. And then I don't really have a lot of thread here. I'll go ahead and try and make a couple more stitches, but I do think that underneath where this hem is here is a nice place to hide a knot. So we'll go ahead and do a couple stitches just so that we can backtrack back to underneath that hem. All right, start backtracking. And then make a little knot right here. My needle does fit through the hole, so I'm going to go ahead and double knot it. Now, let's go ahead and let's see. That was the last of either the white or pink thread. So let's go ahead and use some of this brown thread. My goal is to get through all of the bikinis that I want to do. I'm shooting for 4, but I'm hoping for at least 3. Oh, don't drop the needle. Don't drop the needle. Yes. Okay, come on. There we go. So I'm shooting for 4, but I'm hoping for at least 3. And if I can get through all of the bikinis with just this one travel kit of thread that came with this little sewing kit, then I think that's going to be fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to go underneath where our knot is. And backtrack just a stitch or 2. Before we continue finishing our seam. Okay, so now I've reached the top corner of my pocket, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit before I stitch across the top. I'm not going to stitch across both layers of the top because I don't want the top to be closed. That's where I'm going to be putting stuff in. So I'll just go back, and then I'll go back the other direction again so that I'm back at the top. And then I'm going to hold the top of the back end of the fabric apart from this end. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and connect this corner, make sure my pocket's laying nice and flat, to the denim. And then I want to make sure that I am going to go down a couple stitches, but then I'm going to backtrack so that I can make sure that I really reinforce that top corner well so that it doesn't end up tearing away from the fabric. So we'll go down a couple stitches, and then we're going to come right back up. Remembering that the tighter our stitching is, the less distance between our stitches, the more secure a bond the stitching creates. All right, and then we will just come right down the side of the pocket, stitching the denim to the button down to the bottom corner. We want to make sure that we reinforce our stitching really well here. So we'll go back and forth a couple times. And then we are going to pull our thread through the bottom of the casing and turn it out a little bit so that we can find a stitch to stick our needle through and make a knot. Okay, so there we have a cute little pocket. And I think I could either put a little button right here, like so, to make sure nothing falls out. Or I could depend on the fact that this isn't really a super large opening. Or I could put a little cover over top. Let's see. I already cut those ones off. Ooh, actually, here's a really little one that is super cute. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna do this. Okay. So I'm going to cut this collar. Yeah. I'm gonna stitch it into here. Okay, so now that we have this attached, I'm going to go ahead and flip it up so that I can cut my buttonhole through my pocket. So it looks like it's gonna be right about where this leaf is. And then I'm going to stick my needle through my buttonhole so that I can make sure that I put my button in the right spot. Stick it right here. And then this is the button that fit in this hole. You're okay, baby. So now when I poke my needle back up, I'm going to put it through one of the buttonholes. And then I can start securing my button. Now buttons are pretty easy to sew, so I'm not super worried about if it's not in exactly the right place. I can always cut it off real quick and reattach it. I want to make sure that I either go across both holes for the button or up and down on both sides, because I want to make sure that all four corners are secured. And they say four corners knowing that circles don't have corners, or at least they're not meant to. Otherwise it's really just a polygon. do a little double knot action there. Set that aside and make sure that my button works before I set this aside. And it does. So there is our fastened pocket. We can slide this right on here. Probably be easier if I had attached a safety pin to the end of this material, but it's not a super long distance I'm trying to get it through, so it's okay. All right. So now this one is almost done too. You can see I'm going to be doing the same thing on this side. I might switch up the fabric, but you get the idea. So we will continue on with the video.
Roll this last little bit in and over itself. Pull that nice and tight. And then we're going to weave it. Okay, oh, there we go. Now I can show you and look. So we'll hold it really tight and then we'll scooch it across our needle, going back and forth.
And once more, double knot. Okay, so now the casing's got a large paper clip and fasten it to the wrong side of the casing. So we've got it fastened to our casing here. And then we're just going to take whichever side is easiest to shove inside and do that. Shove it inside. Scoochy, scoochy, scooch. Pull that out. I'm going to pull all of the wrinkles off the edge as we scooch further in. And the further in we get, then the easier it is to smooth out the wrinkles. And so we'll keep pushing. Oh, you know what though? I don't need this safety pin fastening it together anymore. All right, so we'll push it in as far as we can and then pull the wrinkles off the end. Once we get this far, we can just squeeze and pull and it comes right off the end. We don't have to mess with them too much. All right. And now I'm eating my words because it got stuck in the middle there for a second. Perfect. So now we've finished this strap as well. So now this one is going to go inside our pocket.
So I'm going to roll up the end just like we did with the other one to make sure that it doesn't fray. It's about an inch down. Make sure this one's got an inch down. And then we'll anchor it again at the bottom by stitching straight across on top of our stitching that we did before. Now we've got that knotted, set my needle aside. Okay, so the last step is to get our pockets in here. So we've got one pocket here we want to get a button for. Okay. Turned off. So we've got our button in the back, we've got belt loops along the side, and then what I love most about my denim bikini tops is they age really well. Like, the more that you mess with them, the more that you wear them and play with them, then the better that they look, because you're constantly going to be just making little tweaks to make it style fit your watching. Please like and subscribe below. It really helps the channel out a lot, and I'll see you next time. So now go ahead. Oh golly, I stitched all the way through that casing. Okay. So when I talk about how I want the pocket laid out, I'm not talking about the design of the bikini itself. What I'm talking about is which way is the pocket going to open. I want the majority of the pocket to be facing down so that gravity is going to pull all the objects down and things aren't falling out of the side. So I don't really want it to be tilted too much. But if it is tilted, I want to make sure that where it's connected to the fabric is still along the side so that the opening is still at the top of the fabric. And then I want to think about how narrow do I want the opening to be. And if I do seam allowance, that's a very small opening right there. So maybe I want it to be wider at the bottom with a point at the top. But then I have a lot of space here where things are, if I use the full length of the pocket, things are going to be falling out of the side. And if I don't, then I just have a lot of wasted space. So then I need either Velcro or buttons along the side, or if I have it connected up to here, you're lying. Lay down and I'll give you treats. Down. Good girl. If I have it connected up to about here, that still gives us a lot of not a lot of security here, but I could have 2 points connected to the neck straps, and that would hold that secure. And then if those points are also connected to the base of the bikini, then that makes the neck straps themselves securely connected, because it's a thicker fabric, the denim is, and it also creates a secure enclosure on our pocket.